I have a traditional Byzantine Jesus icon on my desk, and I am beyond thankful it survived the disaster that was our move from Florida to New York. It's a gold leaf, handmade portrait of the Christ that I purchased while visiting one of the world's oldest Christian iconographers in Turkey some years ago. Their workshop is a sanctuary of loving craftwork, an homage to Jesus the carpenter, whom I imagine chose and refined his construction materials as thoughtfully as his words. Entering the artisan sanctuary is stepping back 1,000 years in time. The atmosphere is thick with silent reverence, but for the scraping and tick-tick-tacking of handmade wooden chisels and hammers, stained and pitted from decades, perhaps centuries of use. Brick and mortar walls tower overhead, leading the eye to a vaulted ceiling, supported by hand-hewn beams that were the size of the Titanic. I remember thinking, somebody hacked those and hoisted them up there. And the dedicated effort still astounds and inspires me. So, at the entrance of this place are stacks of reclaimed or purposely grown hardwoods, haphazard pieces sort of jutting over and under each other, much like the serpentine cliff-edged road on the journey up the mountain from the workshop. From this raggedy, resurrected stock, master woodcarvers form foundations and frames for the fine artists whose whispered brushstrokes create the tree of life, Jesus, the apostles, and a host of other familiar scenes from Christian stories shared for thousands of years. There is no TV, radio, or computer. There's no social media, no noise, just the blissful, reverent sounds of inspired creativity. The entire workshop is a tribute to God's craftwork bursting forth from within us. My icons, I also have a tree of life, maybe my favorite symbol. My icons remind me of and connect me to that unique space and to those faithful, patient, careful craftspeople whose spiritual art recalls Christianity's heritage of beneficence. The Jesus I know and see reflected in the gold leaf is a human, capable of acts of loving kindness, unconditional love of strangers, and to demand the entire society care for those on the fringes. And Jesus says he's like this because God makes him so. And Jesus says that if we too look deeply within, we'll be capable of even greater acts of loving kindness. Icons, Byzantine icons particularly, invite us to imagine the earliest days of the Christian story as a legion of Jesus communities worked out what it meant to follow, believe in, or otherwise focus on Jesus as a God-bringer. Those ideas eventually formed into sects and denominations, somewhat segregated by their images of Jesus. As early as 150 years after the crucifixion, excuse me, Jesus' name was used to support numerous belief systems, many of them outrageous. For example, the much-loathed Marcion proposed that the God of the First Testament was in fact not God at all, but a demiurge, a lesser God to the God that Jesus revealed. Marcion's Bible consisted of only 10 Pauline letters and part of Luke, which he renamed the Gospel of Christ. Well, since then, Jesus has been used to support all sorts of heinous human activities, including, of course, slavery and nationalism. It bothers me deeply to see Jesus, the ultimate icon of love, weaponized for hateful human endeavors. And since part of my calling is interacting with people who hold different images of Jesus, often ones that support bigotry and hatred, I find myself glancing slightly left of my monitor more often, where my ironically lavish, gilded icon of Jesus reminds me to lavishly gild my neighbors with compassionate love. My icons bring me comfort, and they inspire me to remain centered in realization of oneness with God. They also remind me that Christianity is ultimately about God's intense love for humanity, a love Jesus demands his followers extend to all people. Christ compels me to share God's unconditional, forgiving, reforming love with everyone in the world, whether we're called Christian, Buddhist, Jew, Muslim, atheist, none, or done. God's love doesn't require everyone to believe the same way, or possibly even to believe anything at all, because God's love is about a transformation of mind, body, and soul, so profound we see God not only in our icons, but also in our neighbors, enemies, and strangers. Love is the conscious universe's homeostasis and what it is inevitably expanding toward. And while some intentionally seek a more profound understanding and experience of this conscious universe, frequently God finds us first. Such is the power of universal love. So we collect all these different words and images and ideas about God throughout our lives. And yet still I find the concept that God is love essential to our spiritual progress, both individually and collectively. If, as disciples, as students of Jesus, we want the realm of God that he talks about to appear here and now, then we need to take all the many concepts, everything we've learned, every idea we like, and perhaps especially the ideas we don't like, and let them gestate in the silent power of God's presence, whether we're in a workshop in Turkey or a Walmart in Tulsa. I think we all just really need to take a break from the noise and make space for God, who silently encourages us to soften our hearts and open our minds. Silence. Someone once said to the great Islamic mystic Rumi, "If you believe in silence, why have you done nothing but talk and write and sing and dance your entire life?" Rumi laughed and said, "The radiant one inside me has never said a word." Like Jesus and other mystics, Rumi understands God as essence and intuits that God and we are continually having a wordless conversation. Sting sang, "We are spirits in the material world," and for millennia, religious people have talked about body and soul. But Jesus teaches there's no difference between the spiritual and material worlds. They're all part of the same fundamental, God. We necessarily use lots of words and icons and ideas to describe God, but ultimately they're only helpful if they lead us to God as the essence, what Heidegger called presence, God's calming, creative, all-knowing silence. A silence that somehow says everything. We're helped along in this endeavor by scriptures such as Psalm 46 and the Holy Quran, chapter 50, which are designed to help us understand the ancient mystical concept of God as the essence of our being. In Psalm 46, verses 10 and 11, it's written, he says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress." And in the Quran, chapter 50, verse 16, it says, "And we have already created man and know what his soul whispers to him, and we are closer to him than his jugular." It's pretty intimate. For eons, people worldwide have imagined a God that's not separate, but is intimately, even subatomically, the core of our entire existence. In holy books from Israel to India, in the First and Second Testaments, the Quran, the Dhammapada, the I Ching, in all of these, God is nearer than our own breath. We are, because God is. God is the master crafter, an artisan of astronomical proportions, also closer than our own breath. God is the intelligence that inspires us to create iconic reminders of God's wondrous, overwhelmingly gracious love and presence in Jesus. Perhaps God sees all of us as icons, every one of us a precious, individually crafted masterpiece created to inspire others to acts of loving kindness that will eventually change the entire world. Amen. Question to think about today. What would you want an icon of you to symbolize? What would you want an icon of you to symbolize? I'll send you into breakout rooms for a little bit to chat with each other, and then we will get back together to see what struck us in our conversations. Please accept the invitations on your screen, and I'll see you back here in about 10 minutes.